The Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings has a long history of building conservation projects. But in the later part of the 20th century, it rather moved away into training and advice giving. So the Old House Project was a conscious return to the idea of practical work, of doing things on site and demonstrating our ideas through a real world example. We found this building after a very long search, looking countrywide at a range of potential projects. This one was very special though. It had the right range of materials, it had a wealth of history, and it was also relatively accessible from many locations. Now, this building began life as a monastic chapel, known as St Andrew's because it almost certainly housed a finger of St Andrew, a relic. But after the dissolution of the monasteries, its function changed. It became an estate cottage, and latterly in the 20th century, a post office and the local grocery. Buildings like St Andrew's are a product of their local landscape. Materials weren't taken that far. They were used locally and the best was sourced that could be found. So we've continued that tradition with our conservation work here, using whatever we can in the interest of sustainability. The SPAB approach involves understanding the building you're dealing with, looking at all its components and working out that long, fascinating story. That helps too in conserving what you've got, and that ultimately is the best way to look after the old building you're dealing with. Conservative repair involves retaining as much as possible of the historic fabric of the structure. So as we look around the building, we can see ways that new materials have sometimes been used to supplement an old timber through using tiles bedded in a lime mortar, or other techniques with stone. It all helps to ensure that as much as possible of the interest and the story of the building is retained through that repairing approach. We're looking here at a medieval mullioned window. This was quite decayed, and so what's been used here is a mortar repair, using a lime mortar to build up the profile of the damaged parts, but still making that honest, expressing that work so that anyone looking at the window carefully can read the fact that an intervention has been made. The natural starting point with a project of this kind would be to replace the roof completely. We considered that, but actually, after taking advice from specialist roofers, we really recognised that the building's roof was not in bad condition at all. We simply carried out some localised repairs to roof timbers and then put back clay plain tiles where that was necessary. One of this building's features, perhaps more normally associated with East Anglia, is decorative external plastering, sometimes known as pargeting. We've got various different types here, but we found right under the eaves of the building some very special early decorative plaster, and we've made every effort to make sure that's retained and conserved in the work that's happened.
So here we are in what is now the kitchen and the dining room of the old house. So we were very keen from the outset, and I think we agreed with the authorities that we needed to create a new opening. This area here was in very poor condition on the outside, and so we agreed fairly early on that that would be the location of a new opening. We got that permission and we started to remove the plaster here, and then we started to find some early timbers, and as we removed the plaster we found this extraordinary remnant of a medieval door case, and had one of those moments in life where you sort of jump for joy and heart sinks at the same time, thinking about the consequences. But we knew from that moment that we really had to reinstate this medieval door case. And it's worth saying that here was a fairly dilapidated Victorian fireplace which had been encasing the door case probably since the late 19th century.
In most circumstances, the SPAB would never consider knocking through the base of a chimney stack. Here, though, we thought it through, we understood what was going on, and we made a very considered decision with the input of Historic England and the Council about the best outcome for the building and its future use. We also ensured that the remainder of the stack was very carefully repaired by Lynn Mathias, a specialist in his field. So we have a beautiful repointed chimney, but also one now that serves the building's needs.
The acoustic challenges of the site were not insignificant, and so we were sort of thinking about how we could address those on the site, and we felt that it was important to have this sort of defining element between the front and the rear of the site, and to create a rear garden with a slightly more secluded and peaceful. So we did a lot of experimenting with walls and wall locations and wall heights, and what was really interesting was we looked at certain walls and the impact that would have on this area. And then we did a model where we looked at the acoustic impact of if we covered it as a walkway. And it was our eureka moment because it gave us a much deeper impact of the acoustic benefits. So using that very important data, we were able to go to the powers that be and say, actually, we think we've got this really strong idea for this linking cloister between the two elements, but also to give us this really powerful connection back to the house. When we were building it, we wanted to use good craftsmanship. We were also really interested in local sustainable materials. So we started to look at the potential for using the earth that was on the site as the actual construction of this wall. We had this amazing sort of 3 days where a load of people were creating this extraordinary long wall that's what you see today.
Essential to the original construction of the building and to its later phases is the lime mortar. We analysed this to understand its composition, and then we went to a local quarry where chalk was excavated. We brought that to site and we constructed our own small-scale lime kiln where the chalk was burnt to produce the lime mortar.
Working with the SPAB Technical and Research Committee, we had to find the most appropriate solution for thermally upgrading the envelope. So we've added secondary glazing to all of the windows, and then on the external envelope, most of the external walls, we've added a layer that they were plastered, and we've added a layer of this breathable wood fibre with another layer of lime plaster on that, which is creating a completely breathable solution. So it's reversible, it's sustainable, and it's also the most appropriate solution, I think, for the house.
St Andrews has a range of historic window types, but most are late 19th century leaded lights. It was really important to us to retain and repair all historic windows, and we used for this glazier Rob Crowdace, who fixed the defects and combined retention of historic panes with the use of new glass. We sourced that new glass from Lambert's in Germany because the skills sadly weren't available in this country to produce the cylinder glass that we need. But we also needed to improve energy performance and acoustics. So the solution for this was secondary glazing, a simple and elegant solution that allows the interior to be comfortable.
So the challenges of installing new services into the house was very much about the SPAB approach of protecting the fabric and making things as reversible as possible, but using modern technology for what it is. So here we are on one of the really important external walls of the original chapel, where the last thing we wanted to be doing was chasing anything in. So we've used this is a digital wireless light switch that is completely self-contained. You change a battery every 5 years, but other than that, it's all wonderful modern technology.
To make St Andrews a comfortable home and to bring a level of warmth never previously experienced here, we needed a new heating system. We went for an air source because that was the sustainable approach we wanted. Conventionally, air source heating is combined with underfloor systems, but at St Andrews we were also considering the conservation side, and it seemed to us much better to go for large wall-mounted radiators, which would deliver the heat but also be more compatible with the historic fabric. In the stairwell, we've retained all historic features. In some cases, the stick balusters to the stair had to be replaced, but otherwise, you're seeing the interior largely as we found it. And that includes the beautifully patinated historic walls, where we've consolidated the surfaces, but consciously done no more. All phases of the building's history are really important to the SPAB, and that includes the 20th century when the house had become a post office too. From that period we have features like this wonderful Art Deco lino and also the tiled fire surround that's so typical of that period. The SPAB's involvement with the building is coming to an end, and it will enter a new chapter in its story where a fresh owner will enjoy it as a comfortable home, sustainable and characterful too.